So as far as listening, what makes successful listening, and what is successful listening, what isn't successful listening?
Imagine that you are trying to communicate to someone in the best way possible so that you achieve an understanding of a situation or a circumstance. One of the disadvantages of not listening is that you are not able to really be discerning and really be focused on being assertive. Right? Mm-hmm. So this leads you to basically fall into, creating the rush of hormones that really affect your brain and really makes you totally foggy in terms of being able to discern. And so listening really means that, and one of the most amazing parts of listening is that you are able to really see what's happening inside your body and not reacting according to what's happening. So, if you see a tiger in the woods, your reptilian brain will trigger this mechanism, the fight or flight mechanism. Yeah. So in that moment, your body is rushed with so much adrenaline because the fear, which is so vital for the ego to actually tell you, this is a life-threatening situation. Right. Let's do one of the three, otherwise we will die. So what happens nowadays is that there are no tigers anymore. And there are many, many situations that still trigger that mechanism, that still flush our bodies, that make us so emotional and so dragged by that energy that is not really part of a strong mindset. Yeah. And if I may, we become a bit more like non-rational animals. And so emotional intelligence with listening means that you actually become a bit more conscious. I'm not saying more evolved or anything. You just become a bit more conscious. You start thinking about things in a different way because there is more than the emotions and more than the hormones that actually become your reality. So you can try communicating to your wife or to your girlfriend without listening to her. And just go blah, 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 and whatever she speaks, you pretend that you listen, but you don't really listen. And see the results. I mean, it's obvious, right? It's obvious what's going to happen. So listening is really, really part of everything that is happening today in social media, in marketing, in the way that we sell our things, or the way that people try to sell their things, it all comes to this.
Yeah, and I know there's cues. There's certain cues that emotional intelligence focuses on, or like in emotional intelligence and in listening and communication in general. I think they say it's physiology is 60%, the tonality is another 30%, and then the words are another 10 or 8% or whatever the ratios are. But I think it's important to know that there's certain cues to look out for. How would you recommend we become more aware of those cues and utilize those to our advantage?
So you mean the cues to listening or to emotional intelligence?
Yeah, it's cues. Yeah, cues that other people give us that we need to be aware of, because a lot of people aren't aware of what means what. When someone raises their eyebrow, what does that mean? Micro expressions, different cues. So I'm curious if you had any guidance on that.
Sure. I mean, that's a huge question for me, really. Basically, there is, I don't know exactly the ratios, but what I know is non-verbal communication and verbal communication. Mm-hmm. And what I know is actually that, not only because of the way that we process in the brain, or the percentage of what we can process in the brain, makes us conscious of what is happening. That's what becomes verbal. So if Einstein had the awareness of 13% of his brain capacity, and if he says that usual normal people have between 7 and 10, then I would say that becomes what's verbal. Everything else that is non-verbal has to do really, in my opinion, with the way that people look at you. The expressions on their eyes. For me, it's really, really, really how they communicate. The way that they communicate with their hands. It really shows what's happening inside their mind, sort of speaking, and really translates what the communication is about. I know that, you know, like every time people look up, it means that they are thinking. Every time people, or, you know, every time cannot be the case, but, you know, many times when people look down, it means that they are not telling you the truth. Now, that's two things that they are very, very common. But then it's about activating something else inside of you, the listener, which is for me what is more important, you know, more than anything else, which is the intuition and the kind of emotional intelligence that requires for you to actually know those cues. Because many times, actually, people are, you know, actors. We are all actors, and we are all trying to get our way around things. And you know, like the snake, just you know, we will manage to convince, or to convince ourselves. You know, that's the worst. You know, we convince ourselves of the lies that we tell ourselves, and when we tell them, it becomes so natural. You know, it's like we don't even think about it. We don't judge ourselves, because we repeat it so many times over and over again that it becomes our reality, and that's where the BS comes from. So I would really look at activating everything else that allows you, to understand those cues, because everyone is different also, you know. Some people are more extroverted, some people are more introverted. Then how do you actually understand the cues from an introverted person who stays very quiet, doesn't move, stares at you in the right place at the right time, but doesn't give you any cues? So, you know, it really depends on the situation, also the environment. You know, what is the environment? You know, that also counts a lot. And really, sometimes it depends on how the person is feeling. So it's really good to even ask people, you know, how are you feeling? How, you know, is this, or even ask, you know, like, are you expressing this because of this or that? You know, in relationships, it's so important. You know, are you actually saying what you mean? Do you actually mean what you're saying? You know, and this has to do with the feminine and the masculine. You know, I know that the masculine is much more direct. The feminine is much more like, no, I don't want you to help at all. When they are actually saying, you know, I really want your help.
Right.
You know? So, you know, those cues, you know, how can you get them? By being really emotionally intelligent, or really finding your intuition, but also asking, you know. And if there is really a powerful communication, then and a truthful one, then perhaps the person will say, look, yes, I'm really saying this, but I mean the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this too, because we can reflect on our own about how we're doing in our performance, and still be completely oblivious to communicating with other people. And I believe it's so essential to check in with other people. We talked about, you know, are you really saying what you mean, kind of thing, and ask them, how am I showing up? What did you hear out of what I just said, to make sure that the message sent was the message that was delivered, you know?
Totally. I mean, that's where communication comes from. You know, it's really asking the right questions, and not being afraid, and really being truthful to yourself. And even if it's in an awkward situation or with an awkward person, you know, sorry, I didn't understand what you said. Or did you understand what I said? Did you understand what I meant? Not what I said, but what I meant. You know, because it's so important, and it needs to come from a space of openness and communication. You know?
100%. Awesome.